Why are we streaming?
It's important.
My office is a mess.
We have to have an archive of our buffoonery. Also, your office just looks like an office. It doesn't look like a mess.
True.
It's just books and paper and Gear VR.
Yeah,
Might
you
want to
can't
hide.
see that.
Might want to hide that though.
Bunch of tissues laying around.
No, those are cleaned up. Just making sure.
You guys are terrible.
Why are we terrible? You're the one starting it.
All right, listen.
Oh, it's a baby.
He's in this
Oh,
crib.
we're gonna get the
Is
show
that
started.
it's a monitor?
We're gonna get the show started, or you guys gonna keep talking?
Hey guys, how's it going?
You know, it's a talking show.
Hey, John.
Eric,
Hey,
what's going on? Has it been a whole week?
It's been a whole week.
No, it hasn't. We
Well,
did Friday last week.
Six
Been
six days.
See, asked a trick question right off the bat. Just his
I was trying to
intention
throw
is
you
to
down,
screw us up.
and it worked.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Has it really been a whole week already? Yeah, I think it has. Wrong.
Well,
It hasn't.
well, see, the important part is it's been a week,
Jesus.
and within that week, my kid started sleeping in his crib.
He's
Is he
upside
on the
down.
ceiling?
Is he a bat?
Yeah. Bad kid. There's Eric's dream right there. Just holy shit, man! I don't know what happened, but my kid's Batman. It's awesome.
Hey,
Oh no, but that'd mean you.
Thomas. Thomas, ask John what's the first thing about his kid.
Oh my gosh, I got this crate of a ton of Batman onesies. They're awesome.
Oh,
It,
nice.
it was like every onesie he could find. Like I think he scoured the web and just piled it all into this box. It was huge.
You know, oddly enough, if you have a bookmark folder, you can middle click on it and it'll just open up all of the bookmarks at once. So I'm pretty sure he just did that on his Batman onesies folder.
He already had one set up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was pretty satisfying finally processing that order on Amazon. It'd been sitting in my wish list for way too long. So yeah.
He's like, I guess I'm not gonna have any more kids. I'll get it for John.
And when you announced you were having a kid, he thought, "Oh, that's much better. John can't wear these onesies anyways." Boy, so who's had a good last 6 days? If we're gonna be pedantic about it.
Not me.
6 days.
Not me.
I drove back in from Arizona this morning, from Scottsdale, Arizona. I was out there at a client's conference, so a conference that our client had asked us to attend, and it was one of those that just way out of our depth. Yeah,
It wasn't a tech conference.
no, it wasn't. In the aspect of the conference that our client participates in, it was a very small slither of what this conference was about. His conference was really about law enforcement. It's this law enforcement database processing system, workflow, service, and we have a client that utilizes a very small piece of it. But this conference was heavy on law enforcement, tracking of child molesters, just terrorist watch stuff. I mean, all this like really crazy, hardcore security, processes data.
It sounds like you just bailed out a client. Are you speaking in code, saying that your client got arrested and you had to go bail him out?
No, our client is involved with law enforcement.
Yeah, see, there's that code again.
They use their system to find people like you. We'll leave it. I don't know what that. I have no clue what that means. No clue.
John wasn't very clear there, Thomas. He was speaking about you.
Where's the sound effects? Where's that? Do we just throw crickets in there?
We'll find them. I'm sure they're there somewhere.
What about you guys? What have you guys been working on?
I know that I dabbled in Let's Encrypt before, and I had the pleasure yesterday of getting a fully automated system with HA proxy and Let's Encrypt, where I can do automated certs, and I'm just ecstatic about it.
Very cool.
Got that up and running. Have a I don't know if we've ever talked about how we have quite a few clients that put us on retainer. So it's kind of what we do. We try to segment most of our developers into a client or two that they work on. So one of the ones that I work most of my time on is the one I talk about on this podcast a lot. So having being able to get this piece in place was just incredible. I've been working on it for a while. I think I've had the HA proxy and a series or a few web servers behind that set up now for probably 3 months. Not in production yet. They're obviously very scared to take that step. And today was kind of the first step in that. So I got a new system set up on it. I got Let's Encrypt set up to work on it, and they're actually pushing forward. So I'm so happy about this.
For people who may be listening who aren't familiar with HA proxy, do you want to explain what that piece does?
Yeah, it's literally just a TCP proxy. It sits there in front of whatever web server you're using, whether it's Apache, Nginx, Light HTTP, anything. Uh, Actually, it doesn't even have to be a web server. It could be MySQL or any other TCP service. It takes connections in and passes it to a backend uh, or multiple backends somewhere else on another server.
Is it
Right.
like
So,
a round robining system? Or?
right. So the benefit to it is it's a load balancer. It allows you to switch out your web servers on the back end without coming down. So you can actually bring up new web servers, start pointing the HA proxy over to it. It's a load balancer, though, basically.
Yeah, it can be round robin or it can be sticky. I think it can do it based on uh, where it remembers, okay, you came in, you went to server one, so every time you make a request, you're now going to go to server one.
Hmm.
Everything I've read said, unless you have to, don't do that. Just keep it on round robin, so that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And then, of course, Let's Encrypt is the free, not SSL, TSL.
TLS.
TLS, yeah, TLS service that allows you to have certificates on websites now.
Yeah, which is another thing that this client is ecstatic about. So they're currently failing on their current web server. So I put a new certificate on here, and we failed right away because I didn't have it tuned properly. Today I got it all set up, and now they're getting an A+ pass on SSLLabs.com. So they're ecstatic. I'm
Nice.
so happy. I mean, just can't wait to actually get live traffic on this system.
Oh, very
Yeah, people
cool.
really love those ranking tools.
Yeah,
That's all I had to say.
you talking about SSL Labs or what ranking tools are you
Like
talking about?
all the SEO tools that produce just a number that says 5 stars or thumbs up or all that stuff. Clients just
Well,
go
Yeah,
nuts over that
this
stuff.
isn't so
isn't
much
really
SEO. This is about SSL or TLS now.
right.
Just making sure.
No,
So,
I know.
so for those that don't use SSL Labs, go check it out. SSLLabs.com. Put your domain in there, and basically it's going to give you a ranking or a grade A to F based on what your server is currently running. So if you're vulnerable to the Poodle attack or any of the other known vulnerabilities, your grade is going to come down. So it helps you make sure that your web server is set to the latest standards, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Nice.
So
Well, I've been writing a whole rewrite of our system here, and ran into a fun problem with iron.io, where we're running a system that is using their version 2 queues, and they've decided that the version 3 queue upgrade is mandatory and have shut us out. And so now our queues are just failing, and we're trying to get things together, but the package doesn't want to work with Laravel 4.2.
So they didn't tell you ahead of time that version 2 was going away? They just shut it down?
Oh, Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm being told. So sudden important, dramatic change required, and have to go in and fix everything
It's fun.
immediately.
It's funny because I mean it's just a queuing system, right? It's like
Yeah,
how much can it possibly change?
And
I
as somebody that runs an API service, you very rarely want to just kill your previous version unless you have to.
yeah, I know. The whole thing is completely baffling to me. Their newer version has some interesting features that are helpful if you're writing a queuing system, but if you're just using a queuing system, it doesn't really do a whole lot for you.
Yeah,
Um,
could their previous version really be so broken at this point that they had to just kill it? You would think they
yeah,
would have some way to run both side by side. Sunset version 2 and say, hey, you have until X date, and even after that date, they
yeah. I mean, if
can,
we're queuing 10,000 items a day and paying the money for, why would they shut us out all of a sudden? I don't
with
know.
without some sort of manual communication, a phone call saying, "Hey, by the way, did you know we sunsetted this like last week and you're still using it?"
Yeah, but I'm working for a company that's enterprise scale. We're pretty big, and actually figuring out who to make that phone call to and making sure that it travels down the line can be difficult.
Yeah,
It's
that's the whole thing about companies that size is they very well could have been sending out emails or notifications and
Yeah,
just going
but
to the right wrong
that's
person.
even more important. They should have when you have a company that big as a client of yours, if you don't have a point person before you screw them up, you need to find that point person. You don't just
Yeah.
shut them off. I would be as that company, you get pissed off and you find a competitor.
yeah,
I mean, Iron IO is not the only game in town for queuing services.
And it's not. I mean, think of it this way: you have to switch out your queuing solution now, regardless. Even if you stay with Iron IO, you've got to switch out your drivers and stuff. Maybe now is the time you take the opportunity to find somebody
That won't
who,
shut you off when you go to version 4.
yeah, or you stay with version 4. I mean, that's the real problem, right? You've stayed behind on a Laravel 4.2 version. It sounds like, and they've kind of sunset their drivers for that.
Yeah, but that's my
right.
point. They
Yeah.
went to
And
version 3. When they go to version 4, they got to screw them again. You might as well find somebody else at this point.
Right, right. Yeah, there's solutions out there. Good luck with that, Thomas.
thank you. Maybe they saw what kind of business we were in and just decided, oh, these guys like getting screwed.
Oh, jeez.
No.
That's
We were
horrible.
asking for it.
I don't
Uh,
think so.
so what have you been up to, Eric? Or have you already told us?
I kind of told
He
you.
was at a conference all week with not listening.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
doesn't listen to the
Bailing out
recorded
forgot
podcast. He
bailing
doesn't listen when it's live either.
bailing out clients, that whole thing.
I did start. So I came to the realization this week that I think John and I have alluded to in the past, and I've kind of solidified it this week with myself, is that Vim to me is no longer an editor. Vim to me is now a workflow.
A
And
lifestyle.
yeah. So I am perfectly fine moving on to other editors as long as I'm able to implement my Vim workflow.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow.
so I started playing with another editor this week that I've been really wanting to embrace for a long time now, and I haven't done it, and I'm doing it this time with a purpose. Um, I started working my Vim workflow into the Atom editor. So Atom.io is where this editor is at.
That's GitHub's editor, right?
Exactly. It's free. It's open source. It's very powerful. If you're a Sublime user, you'll be familiar with Atom. It's very, very similar to Sublime, and I'm enjoying it a lot. And the reason I'm doing this, because we're professionals. We have professional tools. We will pay for PHP Storm, but I'm constantly when I'm in the community doing user groups, whether it be a Laravel user group or a PHP user group, there's always people who just can't afford PHP Storm. It's not a lot to us, but again, we make money off of it. And to some people, that licensing fee is not something they're willing to dish out for their little side project that they work on every couple months. So I really have wanted to start to put together other solutions that I could share with them. And historically, it had always been NetBeans, because I remember back in the day using NetBeans and it being very similar to PHP Storm. But the reality of it, I haven't used NetBeans and I couldn't even tell you how long. So I started and NetBeans is open source as well. But I really wanted to give Atom.io a crack. And I probably spent a good portion of my weekend this weekend getting it all dialed in, getting plugins, going back over to PHP Storm, seeing some functionality and saying, okay, well, how do I get this working in Atom.io? And I got to be honest, I'm very happy with where it's at. Again, we're professionals. I'll probably continue to use PHP Storm, but for these quick edits, for these small projects, I'm getting very comfortable firing up Atom now and using it. Not only have I gotten the functionality similar to PHP Storm, but I've actually gotten the functionality pretty close to my very tweaked out Vim install that we used to make fun of, where I have nerd tree functionality for navigating the file system.
We still make fun of it.
Absolutely. But ultimately, I mean, I think what I like to do is put together a blog post for PHP developers who want to use Atom, show exactly what plugins I'm using, how I'm using them, how it's similar to PHP Storm. And the good thing about it is, now I feel very confident that I have a solution when we're at these user groups and somebody says, hey, what can I use to help me do some development? One thing I have noticed, and tell me if you guys feel this, because it might just be me. I noticed it again when I started dialing in Atom this weekend. I've noticed it before when I've gone back to my Vim configuration for some development. I seriously think PHP Storm makes me a weaker developer.
Really? Why is that?
I find myself where I've become very dependent on the strengths of PHP Storm. So I'll sit there and I'll code up a class, and I'll start using Carbon in the class, and I'll forget to include it in with a use statement at the top. And it's just little things like that where PHP Storm is great because it handles it for me so transparently that I forget it's even doing it. But when I get back to a real editor, I realize,
real editor.
PHP Storm's not a real editor.
Boy, Vim's getting racist now.
PHP Storm is an IDE. When I get to a normal, just a plain editor, put it to you like that, I just feel like it's like, there's the finer details that I've stopped concerning myself with when I'm coding in PHP Storm, because Storm handles it for me, that when I get to just a plain editor, I don't know, I just feel like I'm a weaker developer, and it bothers me.
I'll give you that, but here's a question.
Sure.
If your contractor who's remodeling your house is using a nail gun, are you going to get on his case about not using a plain old hammer and nails?
It would concern me if he went to pick up a plain old hammer and nails and started banging his finger into the wall or something. Yeah, that would raise like my antennas a little bit.
It's just been forever, man. I don't
know how to hammer. I just don't know.
Okay, well, that does point to a fundamental problem somewhere else. I'm just saying, I think PHP Storm catches a lot of things before they become what I would call incredibly difficult to find edge case bugs.
It's not even catching like it's trying to protect you. It's trying to make you more efficient. It's like you probably wouldn't know to put this use statement up here, but we'll put it there for you so you don't have to deal with it.
Well, sure, that's just a time saver. But I often see a variable with a yellow underline, and I look at it and I go, well, what is that there for? I hover over it and it says using a variable which might not be properly declared because of previous if statements.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, if I had not tested this on every use case, there's a use case where that variable wouldn't have been set and the page would have crashed. So I understand what you're saying, but I can tell you that an editor that doesn't point out stuff like that is going to lead to more small bugs that can really bite you that, just it didn't catch for you.
And again, going back to the client, I always talk about the majority of the developers they use Vim on a remote server. And I open the code in PHP Storm often and open a pull request fixing those types of issues. Like variable not previously defined. And you open a pull request and you're like, this variable wasn't defined, I'm fixing this for you. Well, how do I test this? I don't know. It was obviously broken because the variable wasn't defined.
Yeah.
So because they're not using a smart IDE, that it's easy to make those mistakes. So while you feel like it makes you a weaker developer, there are so many scenarios where it makes me stronger. You find things that you would not have noticed otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't mean to. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't be using PHP Storm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I use it every day. I'm just, it's like one of these, you're Rocky Balboa, right? Every now and then you've got to go and just start hitting these big slabs of meat and just remind yourself that you're a good PHP developer. And I get concerned that I start to use it too much as a crutch. Like,
Sure,
I
can understand that.
But
I just want to make.
But keep in mind, like with the scenario you talked about, the use statement isn't required. You don't have to have that.
But that's an example, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think what Thomas pointed out might even been a better example when you start to get these little squiggly lines, and even in Vim, well, I mean, Vim would catch syntax error, but you have in PHP Storm where it'll gray out a variable that's not being used anywhere. And,
right.
That's handy to have, but I just feel like that's not something I should depend on the editor to do. Like, I should be a good enough developer where that isn't
Nobody's
an
that
issue.
good. Nobody's that good.
I don't know.
It's so easy. You get in the mode of you're going to write code. You're probably refactoring it because very few people take the time to architect their code. You have a thought in your head. You're like, let me bang this out. You're going to code, and you're going to change it as you're going. There's so many times where I'll write 10, 15 lines, and like I scrap 3/4 of it, and I keep going, and I'll have something defined before that I no longer need. Mm-hmm. So the fact that the IDE says, hey, you don't need this? I'm like, oh, thank you. I forgot about that. Let me go get rid of it.
Well, and even Jeffrey Way, during the Laracast videos, every once in a while you'll catch him pull up a page that throws a whoops error. He goes, I forgot something. And that's even with, his preferred editor with all the bells and whistles turned on, trying to do the presentation that he's practiced and recorded. Everyone's going to make mistakes. I just prefer my IDE catch them for me before I catch them on a lint test or something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah,
but I do get your point.
Thoughts. Yeah, my thoughts.
There are some classes, like when I'm writing test cases, I don't use any tools to help me write my test cases.
Yeah.
I make sure that I'm writing it completely by hand and that's my little practice session to keep myself clean, fresh.
Yeah. So I'm hoping if I say it here in the podcast, I'll actually do it. But look for a blog post from me in the near future on configuring Atom.io for a PHP developer.
I actually want to see that. I would love to see your comparison, possibly between that and PHP Storm.
Yeah, I will. And of course,
I didn't know you're that into it, so
I have a lot of. I mean, and again, I have my Vim workflow pretty well defined in it. There's a couple things I haven't been able to do that I tweeted about one of them this week, which is, in all my other Vim workflows, I have mapped, when I'm in insert mode, I map JJ to kick me back into normal mode. And I've been able to do it on all my editors, including PHP Storm, but I haven't been able to figure out how to do it in Atom.io. But short of that, I've gotten a lot of my Vim workflow in Atom.io. So, moving on, I got a question for you guys.
what is that?
Yes, sir.
And this is a touchy subject, but I'm gonna bring it up because this is where we talk. This is a safe place.
I was wondering why you weren't wearing pants.
I had a conversation with a friend this week, and
You have friends?
I have a friend. And it was about a sensitive subject that I know I've addressed in the past. I know on certain levels, John and I have discussed in the past, and I'm just curious about everybody's input on this. So this friend of mine had somebody working with him, and the person working with him was very talented, very smart, had a lot of skills. I mean, he's leveled up. He's very good at his job. The problem is he knows he's very good at it. He's very arrogant about it. Very sort of a bully. Kind of one of these, this company can't function without me mentalities.
Ugh.
But again, his skill sets are on point. I mean, he's just as good as he thinks he is.
So with Thomas's sound effect, was your friend talking about Thomas?
Now. Was he?
I needed a way to talk to you about this, Thomas. No, of course it wasn't you, Thomas. But we've all had these people. Like, we've worked with these people who are arrogant as hell. They're
Well, that's
dicks.
a good question, though. Is that, could it be me?
No, it's
like,
not.
would I not? No. But would I know? Would, if I was an arrogant person, which that I know I am, but I try to reel it in. I've been made aware that I'm an arrogant person, and I've tried to not be a dick to people. But there's a certain point where your personality is incorrectible. It's the person
Jesus
you are.
Christ, it's not you big baby. Stop.
No, but I mean this. I'm saying I understand this. I feel for the person who can't get along with other people because he feels like he's the superior in the group or whatever.
And you honestly feel like you've felt that way before?
I have been in that situation where I've worked
Are
with
you
people
feeling
where
that way right now?
No. But I've worked with people where I looked around and I was like, these people are clowns. They have no idea what they're doing. I need to stop them from hurting themselves.
Well, this is interesting. This is taking a turn I did not expect.
It happens a lot with security-oriented stuff where people are like, oh, that field doesn't need to be CSRF verified. And I'm just like, no, like, these are your clients. You can't screw them. You're not allowed to. You know what I mean?
I don't know where to go with this.
Okay.
John, help me out here.
Let's bring it back to what you were saying. Bring it back to your friends.
Let's not turn this podcast into an intervention.
I'm going to try and dig Thomas out of this one here.
So, John, I know you and I have had very specific conversations about, people.
He says, let's reel it back into what you were talking about, and then interrupts you to say, Thomas.
About people that, we were wondering if they would be a fit for the organization, and we've had concerns about, how well they would gel with the group, mainly these sort of scenarios. I mean, have you worked with people like this in the past, and how do you go about dealing with this?
Fox Pro.
I have not.
Note to the editor, please remove that.
Luckily, I have not dealt with that kind of personality so much. So I can't say that I've had to let anyone go over it.
That was not helpful at all.
I don't know what to say. I haven't had to deal with anybody that I worked with personally that's had such an ego that I couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
I knew
I'm probably that person, I guess, if I haven't dealt with it.
If there are no assholes in the room, you're the asshole.
See, now I'm wondering what it was that drove us to get together and start a podcast. Are we just three assholes who looked around and are like, what are these other idiots doing? We need to tell them how to do this right.
Oh, man.
Change the name.
I can't wait till after
PHP
episode,
to
so I
PHP
get some
assholes.
names. All right, back to your story.
Yeah, so you're talking about a workplace culture and how important that is, and I think I know the direction you were actually headed, which is that if someone asks you, hey, is this person a good programmer, do you just say yes, or do you say yes but? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going that route, it's not so much the personalities, like being a jerk or, thinking they're too good for the room, but I've had that experience where a person didn't gel with the group, and I've had to let people go over that, and that's never easy, especially when they're a nice person. I haven't had the issue of somebody that was arrogant, I guess.
how do you do that though? How do you fire someone and they say, well, was it a performance issue? And you say, no, it's just no one likes you. You were doing really well, and then everyone was just like, that guy sucks.
I don't know, Tom. You can let us know next week, buddy.
I gotta say, I've only had to let somebody go once, and it was, what, 12, 14 years ago at this point? And I actually got a call from an employer yesterday, or this week, saying, hey, so-and-so put you down as a reference. I'm like, I haven't worked with this guy in 12 years.
I thought that's what we were talking about. I thought that was the...
Well, that's what I figured out as you were talking. I don't think that's where Eric was going.
Not exactly, no.
I've derailed things quite well.
You did. I worked with you on that, but...
And I don't think we've got a cohesive answer here yet.
We have not. So continue your story.
No, I mean, that's the story. I mean, essentially what I told him was, depending on the position you're in, assuming you're in a position where you have some say over that person's career path, you've got hard questions you have to ask. Is his value to the organization worth any personal issues that this guy has with the people that work around him? Yeah. My number one rule to him is, as a general rule of thumb, we try not to bring those type of conflicts into the group, because once they get in, they can be difficult to extract.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But end of day, and this was really the thing I told my buddy was, end of day, everybody's replaceable. I don't care who you are. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care how good you are at a job. Everybody's replaceable. And as long as you're willing to replace them, I mean, sometimes that's all that's needed, that fear of God put into somebody to realize, okay, I've got to adjust my attitude. But at the same time, you've got to be willing for them to say, you know what, screw you guys. You guys can't do this without me.
Yeah, and that's actually it's a very common problem with system administrators. There's a whole field of work that just
Well,
helps replace system admins.
and it's funny, when I first got into the IT world, I, I really didn't understand open source back then, but I had this desire to share knowledge. And I wanted to tell people how I did things. I wanted people to explain to me how they did things. And I realized that there's a whole culture of people out there, and sysadmins seem to be like top of that list, where no, they're not going to tell you how they do it because that's their job security. They have their job because they know how to do this and nobody else knows how to do it. And it's that secret sauce that keeps them emploed. And they
trade secrets.
Yeah, and they protected that stuff. I mean, to the bitter end.
Back when I was in college, so my first full-time job just thereafter, and showing my age, back in '98, I worked on a database system called QA.
I was just about to graduate high school back then.
Yeah, see, I was graduating college. So they were in a lurch. Not many people knew this database system at the time. I came in, helped them kind of revamp everything they were working on, all their reports, and they kept telling me stories about how the person before me just refused to show them how to do anything. And my approach has always been, if I show you how to do this part, it makes you wonder what else I can do. So one, it offloads my stress. If you're able to create a report that I don't have to create, great. And again, showing you that benefit.
Yeah, also, reports are the worst.
Yeah. Well, that's an example, but anything I can show somebody else how to do, if they are above me and they really don't understand anything, all they're going to take away from that is, okay, they're showing me how to do this. They can do so much more. It wasn't so much a job security thing as much as it was helping them succeed to want to keep me around.
Right.
Yeah.
You definitely see more of as an asset in that position where it's like, okay, we have John. John will explain it to us. He'll show us how to do it. And so yeah, I often think back to that when I go through these little spells where I'm getting tired of doing the user group thing and organizing talks, and I always go back to how difficult of a time I had when I was trying to learn this stuff, and it kind of motivates me to kind of keep doing this because I feel like I'm making that. I'm opening up an avenue for people who want to kind of get into the industry or learn more. Because I know when I did it, it was tough. It was like you're reading through books, and not everybody wanted to talk to you and explain things to you, and it was a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like to think that we're making things a little easier.
Let's take a pause here for a second because I want to put in an edit point.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we want to bring up our situation in North County?
Yeah. I don't have a confirmation on the date from Robert yet.
I thought you said September was going to be the last meetup.
Yes, but it's either going to be... Well, it's hopefully going to be the 20th. He needs to confirm it for me, but it does. That's fine, actually. So yeah. Well, let's.
All right, so let's take a pause, and then you just pick up with, well, speaking of meetups, sort of thing. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hold on 1 second. And after about 2 seconds, Thomas, anytime you want to start talking. Anytime, Thomas. After the silence, just any moment you want to start talking.
So, speaking about
after the silence, Thomas. After about 2 seconds of silence, Thomas, feel free to start talking.
Speaking of meetups, the North County San Diego PHP meetup is coming to an end.
Is it
No.
is it coming to an end?
Yes. It is for the time being at least coming to an end. There's uh, a couple big things. Business.com, where we've hosted the meetup for 4 or 5 years now. They've hosted us, provided food and beverages and space, and they have been absolutely fantastic. And not too long ago, they were purchased by a company named Perch, and so some small changes have been coming through. But Perch is moving them to a remote-only workspace, so they will no longer be able to provide the office location for us. And on top of that, I am going to be moving.
You're
So
just compounding the problem, aren't you?
I am. I make everything worse. I will
So
be heading to Colorado Springs.
we have two parts to this then. All right, number one, business.com, who we've been so appreciative of their support, their hosting, and fun fact, business.com, Robert was one of the owner of the sdphp.com domain.
.org.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
.org.
sdphp.org domain.
Robert has done so much for us and for the PHP community, and we really can't be thankful enough.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate to see they're going away. And of course, I was going to give you a hard time and say, well, now you got to step up and find a new host. But then Mr. Gorephobe here, Mr. I don't go 3 blocks from my house, decides, well, I'm going to move to Colorado.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll discuss why I'm moving in a future episode.
You're moving because pot's legal there. That's why you're moving.
Why does everybody jump right to that conclusion?
Well,
Wait,
I
said
right.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Am I right?
That's 90%. Sure.
What's that factor, really?
No. No, I'm moving there. I'm moving there for financial reasons, for personal growth. We have a whole topic about it. I'm sure we'll want to discuss. But it's coming down the line. We're looking at December-ish. So, yeah, this will be my big goodbye to SDPHP at this meetup. Unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily the end, though. I mean, if we happen to find somebody else who wants to take up the helm, find a new location, we'll help with the organization. We'll help find presenters. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the absolute end of SDPHP North County, but it is looking pretty bleak.
And it's sounding like the start of Colorado Springs PHP.
Absolutely. A thing which exists and yet has no meetup scheduled or passed. So I will, once I'm settled down there, I will try to be getting our sister meetup going so that we can collaborate, do remote presentations.
We've got to talk about the San Diego Laravel user group too, man.
I know. Yeah, it's
promises were made. I'll be there for you, buddy. I'll help you, buddy. What happened?
I lied.
Look at you.
I just flat out lied.
So you guys realize we're 30 to 40 minutes into this thing and we haven't covered one topic.
I would say, gentlemen, we're pretty deep into our little podcast yet and haven't talked about any news. Are there any news topics we want to fire through?
Well, last week.
Hey, John, why don't you hold on for a second, John?
Hold on.
Last week I was talking about deploying systems with the vendor directory included. Yes. Do you remember this conversation?
I still don't believe you.
Today,
yes.
Today there was a fantastic article about using a system called Stasis to essentially clone everything that a Composer JSON needs into a local system, a local web server that will host it all with a slight tweak of your Composer JSON file. So you basically give it a JSON file, a Composer JSON. It builds up a web server that downloads everything and then starts hosting it. And then you just add that web server's IP as a repository, and now everything is pulling from your downloaded offline backup of your library of your packages.
Yeah, so Stasis isn't new.
Right. It's been around for a
No,
while.
but it's a really great article that breaks down why you would want to do this, how you would do it, and it even goes as far as to have troubleshooting steps for if you can't get it to work on Windows, then here's a homestead change you might need to check out, or a Wi-Fi extender issue. So it's a great article, and I really will be implementing this at some point soon for some of my testing systems where I have to rebuild all the time.
And it's funny, we're sitting here calling it Stasis, and it's Satis, Satis.
Satis. They
Oh,
should
that's,
rename it to Stasis because that makes more sense.
It
that's,
does.
that's not what was in the Trello board.
Right. I realize that as I'm looking through here. And I know I've seen this before, I just haven't implemented it.
Oh, yeah, status. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Stasis makes more sense.
So, yeah, we'll have that link up in the show notes. It's a great article, and I recommend people check it out because it backs up my position from last week.
Sort of.
Not really.
Sort of.
Kind of, but not really.
You had something to say before I interrupted you, John?
I was going to talk about the fact that we spend almost every episode talking about how we have 2 or 3 listeners. And we had something fun happen last week, or was it the week before, where we got quite a few new listeners.
Yeah, fun and terrifying.
all at the same time.
Yeah. It's funny when your listenership just goes from, 30 or 40 to 160 overnight.
Yeah. So we were mentioned on phpdeveloper.org, which is maintained by Chris Cornett, who is a fantastic guy. And my memory of him, I've met him a few times at PHP Tech, and when I gave my security talk, what was that, 2013-ish at Tech, 2012?
Sounds right.
Somewhere in there. I talked to him afterwards, and he made me feel like a fool. He attended my talk.
Super nice guy. Just put me to shame. Just terrible shame.
He is, and I made this stupid mistake. I try not to use the $_request global variable. Granted, with modern frameworks, they package that into some sort of request object for you. But when you're handling the request yourself, you should be using get or post. And in my example code, I was using _request. And I asked him afterwards about the talk, and he said, "Oh, it was really good, except this. You shouldn't be doing that." I'm like, "Oh, you're right." I felt so silly.
You shouldn't have been wearing the VR goggles the whole time either. It was weird.
So yeah,
that's what I do when I'm out.
PHP developers mentioned Phil Surgeons actually tweeted that he was listening to one of the shows, which was fun. So
we grown exponentially. We went from 2 listeners to like 7 listeners.
Yeah.
And we probably won't talk about PHP Fig for a while.
Because we're pretty clear we have no idea what we're saying.
Yeah. Well, one of our rules is no politics here, and what's going on with the Fig is a lot of politics.
Mm-hmm.
Except now the people on the other side are like, "Why aren't you covering our position? You cover the other side so well."
Yeah,
right.
And that's the thing I wanted to bring out is I think Thomas had captured it best, and unfortunately he had captured it, when we're having a conversation in Slack and not on a show or a tweet or anything. But he said that something that's important for them to understand is this is how it's being represented to developers on the outside. Like, we're not following everybody's, word by word, line by line positions on this. We are PHP developers who care about this, and this is what we see from the outside. This is our view of it. So it's important for you guys to understand, when I say you guys, I mean Fig, to understand that this bickering, this conversation you're having back and forth, how it's being represented on the outside. Sure, you have people that like Phil Sturgeon can come in and say, listen, you guys don't understand this piece of it, or you don't understand the whole story because of this. And he may be correct, but that's not really the point. The point is, this is how the general public is viewing it. The general development public is viewing it.
There's no Fig blog written by a neutral third party.
Right.
And all we're reading are people's opinions as they happen, which it can be tough to parse through in a group that has as much discussion going on as it does, because I try to follow some of the Google, what's it called?
Google Groups?
Yeah, I try to follow some of the Google Groups conversation, and it can be just tough. A lot of entries that just have +1. It's like, I don't know when Silex framework says +1 what they're saying necessarily.
Yeah.
Or whatever, whatever it is. So, yeah, I think we've tried to cover all the positions that we're aware of as well as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've expressed our opinions quite well, but I don't want to stay involved in the politics of it too much.
Yeah, it's hard, especially when you've met some of the people face to face. Like Paul M. Jones, I think, is a great guy. Met him again at PHP Tech, and he brought up on his blog the two standpoints of the people that want to keep it framework centric, or there's the new group wanting to make it all about the PHP community. And the fact is, the PHP community is looking to these PSRs and trying to implement them in their own projects, even though they're not part of any sort of framework.
Yeah.
So
we'll see where it goes, and we'll still cover news and stuff, but I think we're going to shy away from drama-related stuff.
Note to self: remove this PHP Fig 3.0 from our Trello board.
Delete this.
No, I don't mind talking about it, and I don't mind people calling us out about it. It's perfectly fine. I think the issue I have about the Fig topic, and I'm just contributing to the madness, is that we've just talked about it for so long, and we're not close enough to it to be subject matter experts on it, where we should have had that much to say about it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm moving that over there. We're done with that topic.
As of this podcast.
I think we said that every podcast for the past 4 episodes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no more news, no more Fig news. We got it.
It's done.
All right.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Have you been pwned?
Hey, Thomas.
Have you been pwned?
Do you know what we use quite extensively, even for the production of this very podcast?
Our voices.
That's right, Dropbox.
Why? What's going on at Dropbox?
Well, nothing new. Unfortunately, this hack of Dropbox usernames and passwords is actually quite old.
2012 old?
Yeah, I guess there was a compromise back in 2012, and I kind of remember this back then, but there was a compromise back in 2012 where a bunch of Dropbox username and passwords got taken. And it turns out, apparently, what are we, 4 years later, there's still people out there that haven't changed their passwords in the last 4 years. And some of these username and passwords are being compromised.
Well, there was a big leak of all the data that was gathered.
Right.
That was the big news, was that this hack occurred and 68 million users' email addresses and passwords were taken, but it's only recently that this data has been massively released.
Actually, from what I'm reading, Dropbox never said the passwords were also stolen. The
Oh, really?
email addresses were stolen. It did not report that the passwords were stolen as well.
You're right. I see that now. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
this is the
this was
first time that they're kind of owning up to the fact that the passwords are
Well, I
actually
don't think they have a
taken.
choice now if the data's out there.
yeah, you can't really just point at that and go no.
And it also mentioned how a lot of the passwords were encrypted with SHA-1, right?
Yeah, and this was during an era in Dropbox where I'm sort of surprised they made it out of this, because it was also disclosed at the time that the data which they had said was encrypted wasn't encrypted. It was just passing through an encryption layer,
Mm,
but it was still being stored on clear text on servers,
at
which was a big
rest.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they really had a bad year in 2012, and it's unfortunate to see it making a comeback, especially since they didn't disclose that the passwords were compromised with the accounts, with the email addresses, and that the passwords were stored so poorly.
Do you think there'll be any fallout from this?
No,
I don't either.
this is something that I've sort of gotten used to on the internet, which is that when a company provides a service that everyone has gotten used to, they're bulletproof.
Yeah.
If you think about when the MySpace to Facebook handover occurred, an 8-month period where everyone just left MySpace for Facebook, I haven't seen anything like that before then or since then, and that was minuscule in comparison to the deployed user bases out now. You just don't see it. If you look at Reddit a year ago, they had massive publicity problems. They had huge, huge problems with their community, and everyone was saying, "Screw this. We're moving to vote. We're moving to vote," and it was over in a week. No one
Mhm.
cared. No one did it. Everyone's back on Reddit. It, user base, when user base is your monetization, then it's just going to stay that way.
What's the lesson learned from this? Huh? We know
Use a
it.
password manager.
Use a password
Oh
manager
my God, use a password manager.
and use two-factor authentication.
As much as you
Yes.
can.
Yes. I tell you what, I sleep better at night knowing that I have that.
And change your passwords too. Change them on a somewhat regular basis.
Screw that. Nobody does that.
So you can actually quickly look up which security breaches might affect you, or definitely affect you, with a tool called haveibeenpwned.com. That's PWNED. And it just asks you to put in your email address
Thanks.
and your
They're just
password.
collecting your data.
This is run by a guy who really knows his stuff, Troy Hunt. And yeah, it's a very helpful tool for knowing whether or not you need to go through a complete password wipe or not.
All right, well, we'll be sure to include that link in the show notes as well.
And I just shared a link to the world's biggest data breaches hacks. And it's a bubble graph showing all the latest hacks. And I haven't looked at it in a couple years, and it's grown tremendously. It's really scary to look at.
Yeah, I always tell people when I do security work, getting
look at
hacked.
that. Oh, what?
Getting hacked is an inevitability. What you
Yeah.
need to do is secure your data as much as possible.
Use a password manager.
Use a password manager. Limit the impact of the hack when it occurs, because it absolutely is going to occur to everybody. There is no absolute protection against it.
Telegram? Despite Telegram's claim of super security, they've been hacked by a group called Rocket Kitten. That's horrible.
Voter database.
Why is MySpace so big here?
I was wondering that same thing.
Because someone got everything from MySpace.
But they're still relevant in 2016?
No, they just have all the data still. 359 million
Wow.
records.
eBay's pretty big here as well. Back in
That's
2015.
Yeah, and that the 360 million or so records, that was in 2008.
I love that Ashley Madison is on here. That's hilarious.
Oh, me too.
I might think I changed that password. Adult Finder.
You know what
Adult
the
Friend Finder.
fallout was from the Ashley Madison hack?
What's that?
You know what the real fallout from the Ashley Madison hack was?
What's that?
Is all the guys realized that there were only guys as actual members.
Yeah, I saw
Not
I
kidding.
saw the stats. Yeah.
Even though all of their ads said that like they had half women.
Yeah, no, they had accounts for women. They just didn't have any users.
All right, gentlemen. Listen, we do this every goddamn week. We end the damn show on negative news. I hate you two. You two are evil.
That was positive.
It's not
We
negative
were
news.
encouraging people to use a password manager.
Yes.
All right.
So I think just the nature of news is that it's negative. Oh, season 2 of the Overwatch competitive game has started
I don't
today.
care about that. I don't care
Come
about
on,
that.
Overwatch is
We'll end it on a positive note.
it's free
It's
this
a
weekend.
Positive note.
Positive note.
Free to
PHP
play this weekend.
7.1 release candidate 1 was released.
Absolutely.
That's
Locked
positive.
in, feature complete.
Vue 2.0 RC4 was released as well. Positive note.
See a couple of releases moving us forward.
There we go. That's fantastic. All right. So we're going to wrap it up with those two positive notes.
You know YouTube is censoring people now?
What a Well, it depends on who you are. That could be a
If I
positive
can't
thing
be
for some
happy,
people.
no one can.
Listen next week for that exciting story.
Exciting, yes.
Okay. This has been another exciting episode of PHP Ugly. I'm Eric Van Johnson.
I'm John Congdon.
I'm Tom Rideout. Use
it
a
ugly.
password manager.
Keep it ugly. Ah. You guys are terrible. All right. Stop your recording.
Stopping.
Oh, man. Brutal.
Thought that went well. Although we didn't get through all our stories.
I thought, those are the shows I like. I like when we're talking about ourselves, the stuff we're dealing with.
I felt like I talked too much. I should have quieted down a little bit.
No, you did great. That does a fantastic flow.
Oh my God, Thomas! Did you watch Mr. Robot?
Yes.
I haven't done any for season 2 yet because you got to pay for it.
It's
It was
very slow.
It was slow.
It was slow, and they didn't bring up the off by one thing at all.
But I thought they were going to.
Yeah,
When he was standing around saying, "I'm feeling off," I'm like, "Off by one?" He kept referencing how it doesn't feel right. I'm feeling off.
The personalities are merging. He's sort of becoming cured, and it's very. Although, dude, at the end, where White Rose was like, "What's he talking about? That's his plan." I was like, "Oh my God!"
Well, no, the one that freaked me out was when he's in the bathroom, and all of a sudden,
and he hears. Him.
Okay, he took off his headphones.
He's got his spoiler cameras on and the spoiler vision on.
Yeah, he hears it. I'm like, wait a minute. They just replied to him.
Yeah. It was very well done.
Put my headset on too soon. Damn it.
I didn't realize you had it on.
I hate when that happens.
We're still live streaming here. So.
Warning spoilers.
All right. Let's stop the stream.